Oil prices, oil prices, oil prices. What does the oil industry think about this war? What do they really think about it? Where are oil prices going? President Trump is so concerned with the price of oil. This is what we are going to look at in this video. What's actually happening with oil prices and what can we expect? So let's just get right to the headlines and let them tell the story. So here's a headline: oil prices jump after U.S. strikes Iran over downed Apache. This is from today, from oilprice.com. So let's start here. The U.S. forces struck Iranian military targets. Oil prices jumped. Of course they did, right? The Strait of Hormuz is the Strait of Hormuz, right? That's why they jumped. That's pretty basic stuff. But look where things get quite interesting. So oil prices jumped after the U.S. strikes Iran because, oh no, escalation means oil prices go up. And then oil prices fall nearly 4% after U.S. Energy Secretary says Hormuz ship traffic is increasing. This was the day before. So the day before they spiked because the U.S. strikes Iran over downed Apache. This was from late last night. A little bit earlier in the day, we had oil prices falling nearly 4%. 4% is a lot. It's a huge amount. Okay. Energy Secretary Chris Wright goes on CNBC and he says that ship traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is rising very meaningfully and oil drops nearly 4%. Right? WTI crude falls to around $87 a barrel. Brent crude drops over 3%. Now, here's something important to understand about oil markets. When prices spike during a conflict, it's usually not because oil is actually missing from the market. It's not like when America and Israel attacked Iran, suddenly there was less oil. You know, America is producing huge quantities of oil and they don't even use much of the oil from around the world. It's not like suddenly there was less actual oil. The reason that the prices rise and fall is not because of the amount of oil there is. It's because traders are pricing in the fear that there might be a scarcity of oil. They're buying, that's how the price rises and falls like this. They're buying insurance against a future that hasn't happened yet, as it were. So when you see oil jump after a military strike, it's not scarcity, it's anxiety. And what does that tell you? It tells you that the market is not actually pricing in a long war. It's pricing in uncertainty. That's why you have these drastic rises and falls on the same day. These two news stories I just showed you were from the exact same day. They were just reacting to two different events. So oil prices jump after U.S. strikes, whoop, all the way up. And oil prices fell after the Energy Secretary says Hormuz ship traffic is increasing. And suddenly there's this massive 4% drop. Now, let's keep moving through these headlines. We'll keep this one moving quickly. Wall Street Journal from today. Oil prices set to keep rising even after Iran conflict ends, Shell boss says. Wael Sawan, the boss of Shell, the CEO of Shell said this, right? Oil prices set to keep rising even after Iran conflict ends. So here's the Shell CEO weighing in. And he's saying that oil prices are likely to keep going up. Why? Why after the war ends? Because the disruption to supply chains, to shipping routes, to energy infrastructure is not something that flips back to normal the day the ceasefire is announced. Insurance costs have skyrocketed on vessels traveling around through the Gulf and that area. Some shipping lanes have been rerouted. There are structural adjustments that take time to unwind that will keep prices a little higher. And yet, or he says they're going to keep them going up. And this is the tension I want you to hold in your head here. The market has still not been pricing in a sustained high. Let me show you what I mean by that. So we have a piece here from Bloomberg. The next headline we're going to look at. This is from Bloomberg from today. Have oil prices already peaked? Three things to know. Okay, and this is all today. The Wall Street Journal piece that I just showed you, where you have the Shell CEO saying that oil prices set to keep rising after the conflict ends. That's from today. And this Bloomberg piece is also from today. Okay, so here's what they're saying. They're saying that oil prices have probably peaked. They're saying that Brent crude may have already peaked just above $104 a barrel on a monthly average basis, even with the Strait of Hormuz largely closed, even with inventories falling. They're calling this a temporary supply disruption on top of a structurally bearish backdrop. Bearish means good, right? A structurally bearish backdrop. So there's a temporary supply disruption, but really the supply is doing very well in the long term. Meaning, let me explain this. What they're saying is that even in the middle of a shooting war with Iran, the oil market's long-term view is actually very good. Demand growth is slowing. Non-OPEC supply is rising. Trump always talks about this. He talks about how they're ramping up production in the U.S. and Venezuela is producing more oil than they have before. And meaning their non-OPEC supply is rising. We also know what the UAE did, where they pulled out of OPEC so that they could increase the amount of oil that they're putting out, and they're rapidly expanding their pipelines. So the long-term prospects are fine. Once the shock of the war fades, attention goes back to those fundamentals. The fundamentals of the oil industry are fine. And that's an amazing thing to say about, and it's in Bloomberg, and it really shows up kind of market confidence. Now, take a look at this one. This is from Anadolu, which is generally not a friendly outlet. This is the Turkish state media. But what do they write? Look at this headline. This is from yesterday. All these stories are from yesterday or today. Oil prices fall over 5% after Israel-Iran halt attacks, easing supply fears. And that's where Brent dropped below $90 a barrel. WTI falls below 87. Great. This is the confirmation of exactly what I'm describing. The moment there were signals that Israel and Iran might be, or having a ceasefire, boom, oil drops over 5% and quickly. It's a massive single-day move. And that's the market saying we never actually believed this was going to be a long-term supply crisis. That's the point I'm making in this video. The market doesn't believe there's a long-term supply problem of oil. So the moment that they saw an off-ramp, oh, everything's fine, the price drops again. And now you have this. Let's zoom out a little bit and look at something a little bit older. This is a Politico piece from earlier this month, from like a week ago. Okay, this is a little bit older. Everything else I've showed you is from yesterday and today. This is Politico reporting a week ago that the White House was worried about the oil price spike. And it makes sense, right? We know that Trump's been focused on it. He wants the cheap gas. He doesn't want a war with Iran that blows up prices for the consumers. And I've talked on this channel, I talked about it, I think about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, about the Iran-Oman story, about how Iran has been trying to use the Strait of Hormuz with Oman saying that they're going to manage it, they're going to charge tolls, and they're going to create a kind of permanent tolling arrangement. And they're using Oman's reputation. Remember that issue? But what the oil markets are basically saying is that they don't really believe in that play. They don't believe that that has any teeth to it. Because if they believed that there was any teeth to that, then that would be a long-term concern. Every time there's a signal that the Strait of Hormuz is opening up, oil price drops like a stone. The market doesn't believe that Iran really has the ability to create a long-term disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. That's my point here. It's getting a little confusing. Let's take a look at one more headline. This is the last one. And this is from today, from a few hours ago. Crude oil is higher, but it is not running after the increased conflict in the Middle East. What does that mean? It's not running. Even with the latest escalation, U.S. strikes after the downed helicopter, and everything's getting a little more skittish and a little more kinetic in the Straits of Hormuz. You'd expect crude oil to be spiking today. No, It's not running. It's not spiking the way you'd expect. The phrase "not running" means that it's walking, right? It's nervous, but it's not panicking. That's how the market is behaving. So let's pull this all together now. Okay, let's kind of talk. Here's the picture I'm seeing. And tell me if you think I'm reading this wrong. I'm not an oil expert. I'm just reading a lot of headlines, trying to dig into a story, do some research, try to understand the dynamics, and see what everyone in different media agencies are saying about the same story in the same 48-hour period. That's what I'm doing here. So here's what I'm seeing. And tell me if I'm wrong. The oil market has access to more information and more analytical firepower than almost any other institution on earth. Okay. And what it's looking at, what it's seeing, is it's pricing in a war that has a beginning, middle, and end. They're not seeing a forever war. They're pricing in disruption, but it's manageable disruption, right? The price spiked when the U.S. hit Iran. It dropped when the cabinet secretary said that ships are moving again. It dropped 5% when there was when Israel and Iran stopped firing at each other in one day. The market is not behaving as though it believes that Iran will continue with its disruptive behavior long term. It is not behaving as though it believes that there's going to be any real scarcity. Right? It's not seeing the Hormuz Strait being closed long term. It's seeing the market is behaving as though it's seeing that this is going to end soon. And that actually tells us something important about where the broader conflict is heading. Something maybe more reliable than any of the geopolitical commentary out there, including mine. Because money talks. And again, the oil industry really, that's like finger on the pulse of what's really going on. And the money is saying that Iran's leverage, whatever it looks like now, is temporary, that the Hormuz situation is going to be resolved, that the end game might be coming into view. So I'm going to keep watching this, keep trying to learn, and maybe some of you will educate me in the comments. But thank you for watching. Please share this if you found it useful. And I don't remind you enough, please make sure that you are following all the videos that we're putting up on Israel 365 News. A lot of important stuff going up there. And if you really want to follow all of my commentary and interviews and analysis, make sure that you're subscribed to Israel 365 News YouTube channel as well. Thank you for watching, and God bless.